All right, everybody, we are ready to get started with our next productivity coaching session. It is with Sam Webb. Sam Webb is the co-founder of LIVIN ChekMate. He was a graduate of Sydney's Drama School and well known in Australia for his appearances on TV. He also recently received credit for his work on the featured film documentary Suicide: The Ripple Effect, which premiered in LA in March 2018. Sam has made or received notable recognition for his work in co-founding the mental health organizations and charity LIVIN after the death of his good friend to suicide. LIVIN was founded on the Gold Coast in Australia in honor of a great man, Dwayne Lally, who, like many others, took his life after suffering in silence from mental illness. LIVIN is all about living your life at the top and breaking the stigma around mental health. Through the development of cutting-edge educational programs, apparel, and community awareness initiatives, LIVIN are launching a generational change. Let's unite to help people start living again. So here's a couple things that we will learn from this conversation. What LIVIN is doing for the world and why it's absolutely necessary. Sam's journey with mental wellness and how he views his challenges as strengths, and highly effective self-care habits and routines that you can use right now. So let me bring up Sam and we're ready to get started. Oh, there he is. All right. Give me 1 sec, everyone. Sam, what's up?
G'day, Ash. Mate, I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, brother. Thank you for doing this. I've had the honor of interviewing in the past, and I loved our conversation, so I had to get you on board this, man. Thank you again.
No, my pleasure, man. It's my pleasure, and it's great work that you've been able to put all this together, and I'm sure people are benefiting from this, no doubt.
No problem. Let's talk about who you are. I know I gave the Sam Webb bio website that someone would read before you would do a TED Talk. Like, tell us who you are. What else? What did I not mention that people should know about you?
Mate, I think, and again, you probably introduced me very well, so thank you. And I mean, you probably covered most of it, but there's a lot of that probably isn't told also in regards to what I do on a day-to-day basis, as to why I do what I do. And I think you mentioned it briefly in that introduction that, I started my journey in this mental health landscape 7 and a little bit years ago after a good friend of mine, Dwayne Lally, took his own life after suffering in silence from a mental health challenge. To paint the story really clearly, Dwayne was the life of the party, very charismatic guy. From the outside looking in, he had it all. And you really wouldn't have been able to pick up what he was struggling with if you were, a friend or an outsider that was looking in. Dwayne seemed to have it all, and he hid his pain at every cost, and ultimately it was his own life. And after Dwayne's death, it impacted a lot of people. Death by suicide impacts, they say, a minimum of 115 to 120 people, but mate, that number is you cannot put a number on someone's life. It's an unquantifiable ripple effect that has changed and ruined a lot of people's lives. And, I don't take I'm fine for an answer anymore. And that was one of the last conversations that I had with Dwayne that night was, him reassuring me that he was fine.
Yeah.
And, I didn't see that coming. I didn't see it coming. It was a life-changing moment for me.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing that. And I thank you for showing one of the things that's inspired you on this mental wellness kind of break, passion, I should say, that you and I are both aligned with. I want to jump in then into how did you cope with it specifically? What are some things that you did then, or even maybe you're still doing now, to remind yourself that, no matter what, you can overcome and persevere, and that, it's not just about being fine, it's about being vulnerable. The things that you have talked about in your TED Talk and even in our interview and offline conversations as you and I got to know each other, like, tell us about, like, what are the things that you did or maybe you still do to keep yourself kind of focused on being the best self when possible?
Mate, I think to answer that as quick as I possibly can, I mean, it's about being vulnerable yourself. You got to really put yourself out there. And I spent so much time in my life growing up as a young guy, being very into my sports and entertainment and, trying to be the funny, happy, positive one all the time and try to have my stuff together or, and not show any signs of weakness or vulnerabilities, because I thought that was weak. And after Dwayne's death, and then reevaluating my own life and where I was in the present moment, I realized that I really needed to shift that mindset and that strategy around being who I really am, without any facades, with any masks, without any fake fronts. I wanted to really put myself out there and show through firsthand experiences that speaking up and being your true vulnerable self may seem hard, and it definitely isn't an overnight success. But if you do it correctly and you work at it and you train yourself to do it safely, you're going to be able to create this great environment, a great network of people around you, and you become, an indirect leader in your own right, I believe. And I think it's, the world needs more people that are open to putting their heart on their sleeve and just being honest and open. There's too much smoke and mirrors these days, man. And
so true, man.
Too many people hide how they're really feeling. And, they look to social media and all these other things to try and get validation, but it's not sustainable. It really isn't.
What about habits that you do on a day-to-day level right now? And again, I know some of these answers because I interviewed you in the past, but what are some things that you do? And it doesn't have to be mental wellness, but like, what are things you do to stay, to stay the mode you are? Because you promote this very happy, positive energy, and it's very inspiring for many people, including myself. Say, okay, it's all good. Like, we all got our shit. We all got to be real. We all got to be vulnerable, not hide it, not fake it till you make it kind of vibe. We just got to be true to ourselves. And so along those lines comes, in my experience, good routines, good habits that we all consistently do. What are those things that you do or strive to do weekly or daily?
Okay. So, and it's a great question. And I mean, how long's a piece of string? I've got a lot of
Go ahead.
Self-care strategies and things that have worked in the past that sometimes fail to work for me when I need them desperately. Something that I've probably started to learn a little bit more these days is probably listening to the people in my life who I trust and who create safe spaces for me. But I feel from a self-care perspective, and I'll talk to you through some routines in a moment, but just to hit on a couple of things which are really important is to, as a human, right? We can't always see and feel and understand everything that's going on in our life. Sometimes we need a little bit of help. We need a little bit of guidance from someone in our circle who we trust, who we believe in, who loves us for the way we are regardless. And I think it's really important to let them acknowledge you sometimes when you aren't doing well, and that when you are maybe slipping down the rabbit hole, and that maybe you're not your best self when you think you're the best self. You said it earlier, and I'm just putting myself out there because it's what I practice, is what I preach. Is I do, looking from the outside in, I am an inspiring guy. I'm positive. I put out great messages to the world. I try and support and help people live better lives, try and keep people from dying too early. I want people to be around. But sometimes I don't give myself so much self-compassion and self-love, and kindness. And it takes someone that is probably in my circle, is part of my routine and is part of my self-care strategy, to sort of say, hey, Sam, are you doing these things for yourself? Are you doing these things that you're telling other people to do for yourself as well? And, sometimes I'm not, and sometimes I'm falling down the rabbit hole. But in order for me to stay well and to stay motivated and to be the best version of myself for other people so that I can be the best for myself, I practice things like exercise. I read. I do stick by a very strict routine now, probably more than ever. With the pandemic going on, I think it's important to, if you're working from home, for example, to have an on and off switch, to not always feel so consumed. I'm very hard on myself. I often think that I'm a perfectionist and that I want to be flawless, but that doesn't exist. You've got to make mistakes. That's human. And I often remind myself that, it doesn't matter, if you miss a day reading, or if you don't get up at 6:30 every morning, or if you don't get your 8 hours of sleep every night. And instead of sitting there, and what I used to do is beat myself up and say, you're not good enough, or why can't you just do it, man? Why don't you just get it? It's all right. You've got to give yourself permission. You've got to be able to sit in that vulnerable place, and you've got to be able to speak what you preach. And that's what I'm trying to do, man. And I'm a student of life. I think I said this to you last time. I'm learning every single day. And what works for me right now might not work for me next week. And
so what works for you right now? Like, what are some of the things you specifically do, like every day?
right now, every single day, I get my good sleep. I love rest. I need rest. I run on a V12 engine. This thing's going hard every day. I need to give this guy some rest. I don't stop. So rest is probably the number one priority. But with that, I like to channel some of my anxieties and some of my, some of my adrenaline into exercise, into feeling good. Whether it's pumping weights, whether it's going for a walk, taking a run, I do something where I'm moving every single day. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I need to bust a sweat or anything like that. I'm moving every day. I try and eat really well, and when I say I try and eat very well, it's not always the case, but I try and stick to a routine that I know that works for my body. And on top of that, man, I read, I'm doing a little bit of, I do breath work. I'm learning breath work every single day. And that's something that's been really new for me because, there still is some stages where I'm having my own struggles, and I've got to check in with myself and find a bit more peace. And that's one of the new coping mechanisms, I guess, that I'm working on, around trying to just slow down a little bit, give myself a little bit of permission to take a breather and to try and find the roses in life instead of always looking for the next best thing.
So along those lines, and thank you for sharing that. I actually do have I do have a question. Someone had sent me a text, so I'm reading it. You've experienced people have had early symptoms of depression, or, your friend who at the time was pretending that everything was good, but there were some early signs. Now, looking at where you are now, what advice would you give someone who is wondering if someone has early signs of depression or anxiety or things of that sort? Since this is one of the things that's near and dear to you, and I know LIVIN does a lot of programs like this, like what advice would you give for these types of people who want to help someone, and how should they know if someone's depressed or not, or getting those signs?
Yeah, it's a great question. And again, I want to make it really clear, guys, that, I'm not a mental health professional by any means. I'm just a student of life. And to reiterate, you don't have to be a mental health professional to say some really basic things or to listen and to save someone's life. And I can tell you through firsthand experiences that it works, and my own research and work. But some of the things, I would probably look at doing is, from my own lived experience, suffering with anxiety and depression as well during my years, it's when you stop loving the things that you love. And that's really important to acknowledge, but not everyone understands that. So I think if you think, or you're worried about someone, I would like to think that it's important to just call what you see from a place of no judgment, a place of fully wanting to learn and listen to better understand. What I mean by that is, if you notice someone is not right with a friend or a family member or a loved one or a colleague, clearly say it. Don't worry about not having the right answers, because you're never going to have all the answers. No one knows everything about anything. Okay. But putting it out there, for example, Ash, I noticed that you haven't been yourself lately at work. Is there something that you are struggling with, or is there something that you're not coping that well with at the moment? And I'll give you a moment to either respond, block it away and say, no, I'm fine. Like most people do. 90% of people, no, I'm fine. And that's okay. But the next thing, what I would recommend saying, and you can't say it fast enough, you can't say it slow enough, is no worries, Ash. Thank you. I just wanted to let you know what I'm seeing. But if there is anything that you ever need to speak about or talk with me about, I'm here for you when you are ready, as a friend. Now, you can't say it quick enough. You can't say it slow enough. What I mean by that is, it'd be different if you said you're fine, and I said, Ash, and you're like, no, I'm fine. And then I went, yeah, no worries, man. Just I'll give you a call. I'll check in with you in a week's time, bro. Take care. That's almost like you're just fobbing it off. It might sound cool, but you're not really, as a listener, you're not really committing to it enough. That's why I'm like, slow down. Let them know that you are there for them when they are ready. You're there to listen to them when they are ready, as a friend. And saying it like that is different than just speed saying it, or saying, no worries, man, all good, we'll catch up for a beer, or we'll go out, we'll go and train. It's all very different. It's all in the tone and the way you say something, which makes people feel comfortable. But I think more important than anything else is listening. I look back at the night Dwayne took his life, right? I was with Dwayne. We had a 30, 40-minute conversation in a room, and Dwayne opened up to me about everything. He told me he tried to take his life before. He was suicidal before, but he said, right this very moment, I'm great. Life has never been better. My future looks bright and promising. And I thought, problem solver Sam kicked in, meaning the guy's always trying to, fix people's problems. We all do. Most of us do that because that's what we're programmed for, right? I'm here going, no worries. You've got so many people that love you. I'll always be there for you if you need me. Please ring me, bro. Don't ever feel like that again. I love you. So many people love you. Like, there was just so much there, and there wasn't as much listening as I possibly would have done nowadays. And what I say by that is oftentimes when you listen, people will tell you what they want or tell you how they feel. And what I say by that is, and a friend of mine says this very well, a psychologist friend of mine says, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak, because oftentimes when you do, people will tell you what they really want. And that has never failed me to date. I listen. I like to think I listen much better than now than when I speak. And I take a real effort to try and listen to it. If I don't understand something, no worries, Ash. You've told me that you've had a really bad day. But what I'm hearing you say, this, am I right if I say dirt, and then it would give you a chance to go, yeah, you do understand where I'm coming from. So you're automatically building that safe space. And that's you can't put a value on that. You can't teach it. You can't train it. It's just, you just got to do it.
Okay. I appreciate that. My last question for you, and it's along the lines, I mentioned this to you before we ever met. I heard about you because of your TED Talk, and then I saw it. And then as a male, I connected with it because you talked about masculinity. And so I guess the final part that I want to ask is what is your views on how we can break this fake masculinity? I understand the symptoms. We've talked about that just now. And thank you for sharing that. That was very deep and profound. I'm now wondering, what is your macro view on what we need to do as a society to help embrace what I feel you get is real masculinity, or this, and abolish this fake masculinity that's infiltrated our culture? When I say culture, like society, not ethnic culture.
I think it's a very, if I had the answers to that right this very moment, it would be it'd be amazing. But I think, Ash, again, it's a great question. And I think where we need to start is start young, because when we grow up, right, when we're young, we're brought into this world by our family. If we were told, it's okay as a young guy to, to show emotions and to cry and to, feel things and to not have to be the ones that always have the answers. And we're educated on this at a young age, and we're shown through role models, people that we look up to. It's going to really help build that imprint at a young age on our brains and on our mindset, because a lot of the things that we learn in science and in neuroscience will back and support this up. But a lot of the things that we take on in our life and lived with generally happen, from when we're around 5 years of age, before the brain fully develops. And I just feel like we need to have the conversations changed, and it needs to be generationally. It can't just be one culture company over here is changing the conversation, or one high school is rolling out these cool programs. It has to be a universal generational change for this to really take effect. And I'm hoping the millennials and the Z generation are striving and thriving to do that. I feel, mate, there is a real shift. I really do. I see a real shift.
I do. Yeah, no, I it's funny. I'll be very honest with you. I used to laugh at the term woke because I felt like it was this overused, like mainstream way of trying to say I'm mindful because I'm woke. But now I have to admit, I'm calling myself out, because now when I see the people I respect saying like, yes, it's time to be woke, I had to be woke too, and learn to embrace, this feeling that change is happening, change is constant, and that the light always overcomes the dark, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, mate, I agree. And I think we're forever learning. We're always growing. We just got to sit back and listen more, I guess. And we can shift it. We can move that needle one day at a time, slowly but surely. And I think there's some great, amazing organizations and people out there in the world that are helping do that work. So I say to everyone, keep it up. And always, my favorite mantra, and a mantra that we live by is, it ain't weak to speak.
Dude, I love this, man. Well, thank you again, brother. Thanks for doing this conversation, and keep up the good work. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Likewise, guys. Thanks so much for having me, Ash. Legendary work, man. Keep it up.